Christy, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks. Great to be here, Adam.
I am really interested to dive in with you about the hotel's mission and what sets you apart in Minneapolis. But before getting too deep into that, we got to give a little context first. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and where you're at these days?
Sure. So I currently am at the helm of the W Minneapolis, the Fauché Tower in downtown Minneapolis. So right in the heart of the city. I say I've been in hospitality my whole life, but have been here in Minneapolis since March of 2020.
Right at the start of everything. So did you started your job at the beginning of the pandemic effectively?
Yes, I would say that's true. I think I had a couple weeks, maybe two, that were semi-normal.
It was in the news, but like nobody was quite sure yet. Yeah. What was that like? Like take everybody back to that whole, like the first couple weeks. Is this your first GM posting?
It's not. I was at a wonderful complex of hotels in Boston before coming to this, but definitely came back to the Midwest and, was excited. There was just a great sense of optimism of coming here and what the hotel was going to be able to do. And W is such a great brand. Everything was looking forward and up. It was, I think, just a time of excitement. And then we started to hear things and there was just some wondering, but I didn't anticipate, I don't think anybody anticipated how quickly it would all come about and, really in a period of a couple weeks.
So anybody who's taken a new job in a new city kind of knows there's some excitement, there's some nerves, a little trepidation. You're getting to know the team. They're getting to know you. They're testing you a bit. You get the people coming up to you and trying to like ingratiate you by telling you all the dirt about everybody else. Like there's a lot of funny dynamics that go on, right? Especially when you go in as GM. I want to explore this a little bit from your perspective as a new leader coming into this hotel. There's a lot that goes into having a successful GM-ship. And one of those things, right, is creating trust. And it basically taking the first 90 days effectively to get to know why things are done the way that they are, like all that. We could dive into that, I guess, if you want. But as you're taking the helm of this new property and having to tell everybody, by the way, I'm new here and none of you are going to be working for an undetermined amount of time. We really don't know how long this is going to be going on. Because remember, this is back in March of last year. So a lot more clarity today.
Yep.
From a leadership perspective, how do you prepare yourself to have those conversations? What's the message and the emotion ultimately that you're trying to convey to the people? Because again, you don't have any history with them.
No. I often say when I start in a new hotel, I drink a lot of coffee because every person, can I take you to a cup of coffee? Sometimes a glass of wine. Like, let's talk about you and who you are and what you're looking for out of your experience in this hotel. I often ask people what's their superpower, what's the thing they're very good at that nobody else kind of might know. It might not be readily apparent to me. How does that come to life in the work that you do? And I remember having so many of those conversations. And so there were little tidbits that I was picking up about each person. And then all of a sudden I realized, maybe at the 10-day mark, this isn't good. And I think maybe from the 10-day mark to the 14-day mark, it went from not good to really, really, really bad. And I'm a really firm believer that in the absence of information, people make it up. And I'm a statistics girl. I like numbers. I need to see those things on the page in front of me. And I can recall having really for 4 days in a row, it was, a daily meeting with the team and talking about here's what we have on the books today. And by the next day, that was cut in half and then cut in half again. And, really needing to say to them, this is not something we've seen before. I started in the industry right after 9/11. And so it's not that I hadn't been through difficult things and you have 2008 but this was different and faster and less predictable, and all of the things that, sort of were culminating in that. And I remember my singular goal was being, they will feel like they knew what was going on. Whether or not I had answers, I didn't, still don't. It's not a perfect science, but I wanted people to know what I knew, and that they didn't have a sense that there was some piece of information that, if it would just be shared, would make their life, better. They would know. I wanted them to know everything. And so that's ultimately what we did. And yeah, I mean, within 2 weeks I had laid off, furloughed basically all the members of the team. And at the beginning we said 8 weeks, and 8 weeks seemed like forever. And then of course we knew later it wasn't forever.
Right.
There was longer.
Right. That is a really interesting perspective, and something I'm a firm believer in as well. Full transparency, full context to why decisions are made. And one of the things that is such an unnecessary mistake that people in positions of authority make is to hold information back and try to craft a message that they think the other person wants to hear, when all the other person hears is that disingenuous way of communicating. When it came time to start reopening the hotel again, so you're sort of moving quickly through. So you shut down in April, right? And then you open back up in July. As you're moving through this time period here, you're getting some visibility on when you're going to reopen. Did you keep in touch with people, or did the hotel or company keep in touch with people through that closure? And was that candor up front? Did that pay off in the end when people started thinking about coming back?
Yeah, great question. So we did attempt to keep up with everybody. I think in the beginning we had this very noble notion that it was going to be full of cocktail hour Zoom calls, and we were just going to sort of be. I can't
and it was for a while.
Yeah, I mean, that was the dream, right? It's like, you guys are going to get a little break. We're going to be closed. We're going to figure all the things out, and then everything will get fixed, and we'll just do Thursday happy hours every week. And that definitely, I will be candid and say that wasn't the case. It was so much harder to pull people together. And as the time went on, and it became apparent that maybe it wasn't going to be 8 weeks, that, then the questions were there. And so I actually I love to write. And I think the written form of communication is helpful because people can evaluate it after they have time to process. It's not simply a conversation where I say something and then they're left wondering, well, what exactly did she say? And what did she mean? And so we started a really amazing newsletter for all of our talent, and it had a weekly business update, and it was full of pictures. And, we also, in the hotel, the team that was still working, we called it the lights on team. It's just our job to keep the lights on. We're not open, but that's what we're going to do. And we jazzed ourselves with cleaning projects. We had flip charts in the lobby. We were writing song lyrics every day. We were, in the beginning, it was like, this is just going to be amazing. And then it got harder, and it got longer, and it got more uncertain, not less. And even when we were getting ready to open, I was communicating, especially with the leaders, that we are going to reopen. But reopening doesn't mean what you think and what I wish it means. It means, without any revenue coming in, how can we build? So let's open the doors. Let's be ready for the guests. Let's build some revenue. But it's not, we were 4% occupancy the first week, 5% occupancy the second week, under 10% occupancy for weeks after that. And so it didn't mean that I could just bring people back to work. We were sort of doing what we could with what we had and the team that was there. And, the services, I'm not alone in this, were pretty limited at the very beginning because we needed to do things safely. We needed to do things carefully. And we needed to be sure if we made a promise to a guest, we could keep it. So it was an intense period of time of communicating. I remember having one-on-one phone calls with the leaders at the end of that sort of initial 8 weeks. And same principle. I mean, at the end of the day, in the absence of information, I don't want you making it up. So here's what I know. We've got nothing on the books. We're at 4% occupancy. This is where we are. But still trying to communicate to the leaders that you are a priority. You are the heart of what we do. You will come back to work. There's just going to be a period of building it back. And I get goosebumps now thinking about it, because there was nothing I wanted more than to walk in my hotel and see that team of people, even though I had had such a really short period of time to work with them.
Because I mean, you hear the stories, right? You know how it's affecting them, and the uncertainty is creating anxiety for everybody across the board. I mean, yourself included. And this is something I want to dive into a little bit here, where people tend to forget. And it's easy when something happens to you. Your boss comes to you and gives you bad news about your situation. Of course, you become very internally focused on that. But I think what a lot of people forget is when, at a GM level, and senior leaders in a hotel, when they have to get to the point where they've made a decision where those things are going to happen through various inputs, and sometimes they're directed to, right? I mean, you've got a boss. Getting in the right frame of mind to be able to do that. But that, like, I've had situations myself where, you know, and I had a similar situation at the beginning of the pandemic, except I eventually ended up getting laid off myself. But having laid off dozens, tens of dozens of people, sitting down in my office, like, and you're drained, you feel terrible. You can't give people answers because, of course, there's a bunch of questions. And so my point is the toll that this takes on senior leaders is a high one. How do you get past that? Because to shed some light into people who don't know what goes on behind the closed doors of a GM's office, how do you manage all that?
I think probably 15 years ago, long before I was a general manager, someone handed me a piece of paper. It was a copy of a page from a book, and it said, "Leaders lose the right to be selfish." And it's taped to this day next to my computer. I can see it right now. And on the top, they wrote, "This is you." And I have tried to live by that principle, that it doesn't matter to some degree how hard it is for me. My responsibility is to the person who's in front of me, especially in that situation. But I have learned over time, in the beginning, maybe it was just a white knuckle, like, I'm just going to be who they need me to be, and that's it. And I am human also, and have emotions, and especially coming here and just seeing the spark of that team, and then feeling like I was the one who was going to put out the flame. And, who knew? I didn't know if I would see them again, if they would choose to come back, we didn't know what the world was bringing. And so for me, I have learned over time, it's protecting my own energy through time alone, through having, some good, maybe informal mentors, but people I can call when it's really hard and say, this is my life today. This is what happened in my leadership journey today. And it didn't feel good. And that they don't have any skin in the game. They're not responsible for the people on the other side or me, but they're just there for that support. And I think, sometimes the idea that it's lonely at the top is a well repeated phrase. And I try to avoid that. I don't think loneliness is the answer. I don't think white knuckling it is the answer. But I still believe that at its core, leadership is about being a servant and losing that selfish edge. And so if someone's going to cry and be upset in my office, I need to make sure that I am prepared emotionally and mentally to take that in and to help them with, what I can of their emotion and encourage them to manage it.
White knuckling it through is something that those of us in hospitality are very familiar with. Redlining and, just head down and get through it. That's one of the things that, of many things, of a long list of things that needs to change in this industry as we move forward. And I'd like to kind of get into the staffing, that whole discussion here in a second. Trying to even think of what is the question here. Maybe the question is, of that laundry list of things that need to change, we've got a well-known staffing issue that's been talked about like ad nauseum for a long time, probably not going away anytime soon. When it comes to the culture within the industry, from your perspective, has anything been learned through this pandemic, internalized, and as we come out on the other side of it, maybe starting to see the seeds of evolution?
That's such a deep question.
I know. I know. And feel free to like stay surface level or say pass.
No. I don't want to pass because I think it's such an important question. And, can I predict if real change has come? I want to believe it. I know that's true in our hotel. And it's not a perfect science, right? Because we have multiple stakeholders involved in the decisions that we make in the hotel. And so, there's this piece of kind of how do we balance the business that's back and the needs of our guests who are so important to us, and the needs of our talent, as we call them at W, that are so important to us. I think the key thing that kept me from just sheerly white knuckling this period of sort of pandemic is, okay, what's our purpose? Like, we might not have perfect circumstances, but I need something bigger. Like, we've got to be on mission to do something here in this city. And our brand is always focused on what's new and next and kind of how do we do that. But in the context of Minneapolis and our hotel when we were closed, and then, during the killing of George Floyd and all of the subsequent, circumstances that have existed in our city, we decided early on, before we were even reopened, that we want to be a force of good and a force of hope. And, the idea that our guests are going to gather again and our people are going to come. And how do we do good with what we have in our hands? How do we do something meaningful with what's here? And it's not like you had money. No hotel was cash rich, let's call it. And so we tried to think about what do we have in our hands? And that ultimately for us was space. And so we ended up opening up our space to different organizations in the city that were either trying to get some events going or that were nonprofits looking for an opportunity to connect. At W, we love fashion. And so we reached out to Minnesota Fashion Week and ended up hosting an event that, we gave our space to. And they did a fashion event that was fully masked and completely socially distanced, back when we were still under mandate. And yet to have people, souls in our building together, laughing and talking, like, it was worth it. 100%. And we learned from that, and we expanded that into a program that we ultimately today call Welcome at W, which is an extension to all of the nonprofit community in Minneapolis, an invitation to come and meet in our space for free, to utilize our space as a way to put their mission forward again. Because really in pandemic times, fundraising wasn't happening for nonprofit organizations. All of the things that they had previously been able to do all of a sudden just kind of dried up. And so, real change, that is real change to us. We have changed the way we view our vendors. How do we find better, more diverse, more hyper-local vendors to do work with the hotel, whether that's window washing or, painting an elevator landing or looking at someone, to do printing work for us, a BIPOC printer. I just think it was inevitable here that we needed to see the value in that community connection. And that has been our purpose, is just sort of how do we connect differently with the community at all levels, who we're buying from, who we're doing business with. Even in our food and beverage offerings, like, we've revamped our banquet menus to include local vendors. And we're not asking for a discount. We're buying their product and we're serving it as part of our experience here because they're local, because they're working in that space and supporting LGBTQ community, businesses, supporting businesses that work with people with disabilities, BIPOC businesses, women-owned business, whatever we can think of. We've got an amazing chocolatier. And so do I know I know it will last here. Do I know if it's coming to our industry overall? I think COVID has made us all think differently about many, many things. And I believe the answer is there has to be an evolution. How quickly or how deeply, I think, will depend on the leader. And that was my challenge to myself, is how do I help us to connect both in a lasting way, but also in a meaningful way, deeply with the people that we really could know and could meet. Yeah. And that's what
I
we've done.
I like that. The being a part of something larger than yourself is so it's you're right. It's one of those things that gives you some purpose and some fulfillment. It's so easy to just get stuck on the last P&L and the next P&L, and you get into that cycle, right? Every month. But at the same time, traditionally, in a lot of properties, choosing whether it's a local charity to support or a local cause or something in that universe it can be difficult. And sometimes it's whatever the month is, that's the thing that you're doing. So
Right.
breast cancer month, autism awareness, that kind of stuff, right? Those are like rarely, and I'm glad to hear that you're talking about this. Rarely do the efforts go into hyper local needs, and usually more national, because a lot of times in brands it comes from the brand, right? And then it's just filtered down. So you support these national causes, which are great, but like the needs sometimes are within the 5 blocks around you. How do you decide what those things are going to be?
Great question. So for us, it was ultimately initially what is happening in our backyard. What are the circumstances? And with the murder of George Floyd, we really felt like our Black-owned partners and community members needed support, and that was a key factor. But I'm of the belief you never do things alone. So I ended up getting connected with a lady named Nancy Corsaw, who runs the Black Business Enterprises here in Minneapolis. And she was really instrumental in educating me about how to connect with different types of vendors and, to do a little bit of the legwork, because frankly, it's pretty easy to just pick up the phone and call the person you've always called. And they've done great work and been great partners. And so, trying to branch out that vendor network was important to me. We also made sure that a portion of what we collect for access to our observation deck, which is a great tourist attraction in Minneapolis, really fun, that we're giving that back to the local community. And so we partnered with the George Floyd Memorial Foundation for the first donation of that, and have gone now to our talent members and said, hey, for the next round, what are organizations that you're doing personal work with? We're not necessarily wanting the person they've heard of or the person they think, but it's who's close to our heart in this hotel, because, it's time. Money is one thing. Time is really the value in the world today. And so knowing that we could be maybe more personally connected and also making a difference in the lives of the people who are within a 5-mile radius of our hotel is sort of the principles of how we're trying to select, what comes next and how
and
that
involving employees in that decision is really important, because they're able to have input on something that matters to them rather than just being told what should matter to them, right? There's an important distinction.
Yeah. And that's really we were talking about staffing a little bit and just finding people. So that's been an interesting side effect of some of this work that we've done, is when we interview our talent members, people who apply for the job, we explain community connections to them. We talk to them about what it is, and we ask them, why is that a good fit for you? And do you know any organizations that you think would be a good fit for us? And it's so interesting to see those candidates. Their eyes are just like, oh, that's cool. I actually had a girl say to me, that's the favorite thing you've said to me in this interview. I told her about the travel benefits. I told her about how fun the industry is. And that was really what connected to her. And even a couple of our partners have referred people to open positions that we have, which is probably a network of employees we would have never had access to, because they worked for, an electrician who referred somebody to an engineering position. So it's not a perfect science. I mean, I wish every vendor would send us candidates and we wouldn't have any open positions and we could pass them on to, the rest of the people who are also looking for great people to come and launch into this industry. But it's been an unexpected side effect. I didn't intend, but I'll certainly take advantage.
Well, I mean, between getting candidates referred to you and people that are in there interviewing with you, connecting more with the hotel's mission rather than all of the things that you get as an employee here. I mean, that's a pretty interesting and unexpected recruitment tool from our conversation here?
Yeah.
Could be.
I get like, right, pays you back.
Yeah. Is there, I have to ask this question because it comes up in conversation. When you're talking about efforts with charitable organizations and community outreach, is there an ROI on that, or does it matter these days?
I think there's an ROI on everything. I say there's an ROI on every conversation because you never know the connection you're making, who you meet, who they know. I think about way back, we needed to do just a small kind of afternoon break, and we've started purchasing some items from a place here called the Cookie Cart, which basically takes high school students and gives them sort of first job experience learning to make cookies. And then they package these cookies and they'll decorate them all any kind of way that you want. And, that connection came to me through a conversation that I had with the CEO of Meet Minneapolis and said, we're looking for a local partner that's really focused around BIPOC youth and how we get them into the work industry. And, we were looking for anybody. We weren't looking for cookies specifically, but he was the one who sort of referred that organization to me. And we've made several purchases with them, including one today for a hot chocolate thing in the lobby. So I think about ROI, like for the Cookie Cart, it's their profit. We're buying their product and that's great for them. But for me, the ability to make that connection and share with our customers that when they do business with us, they're doing great business with Minneapolis. Yeah. It's not just the hotel, it's through the hotel, to the community. I think that has ROI in goodwill and in referrals and in the reality that if you could choose to spend your money anywhere, why not choose to spend it with an organization that can pay that forward a little bit and has a connection? The hard dollars ROI is always a harder question. And I'm sure every owner, would love to know that there is. But sometimes the ROI, especially in our world today, is like, what good did you bring? What did you contribute? And I think that's sort of the perspective that we came from at the beginning was we don't know what will happen, but we've got to build back this amazing city. And so let's get started with what we have.
I've been in those asset manager meetings, at the end of the month or beginning of the next one, and those hard dollar ROI conversations always come up, whether it's a kind of an after action analysis of something you did previously, or if there's a discussion around the table about something that wants to get done, that always comes up. And the hard thing, even back when I was doing it, was always, it's such a soft skill people business. It's really, sure, I could tell you how much, the donation is going to cost or what the labor cost is going to be, but that where is how do you how do you put a value on goodwill? You can't. And so I'm wondering now, because I am sort of out of the loop when it comes to being a part of those meetings. How is there, like, when you're in there talking with an asset manager or an owner, is there an understanding that things have shifted? Money is still important because they got to pay the bills, but is there more of a realization that there is a soft side to the business that you just have to play in that park to be successful if you want to move forward?
You know what I think it is? I think it's about the level of trust. I think trust has grown between operators and owners in this period of COVID because we all made hard decisions and ultimately we had to make them together, and they were nothing that either party wanted to do. We wanted open hotels and healthy people and a thriving economy. And we all had the same goal. It just wasn't there. And so then I think my experience has been that there is a deeper level of trust. And so when the ROI conversation comes up, maybe the ROI is pride in the organization, which is retention, which down the road is less dollars spent on training and hiring and those types of things. So I do believe that hospitality owners in particular, after all that has happened, understand that the people have all of guest talent, that we all have hearts, and that there is a part of the world that has to be led from that space. And so my experience recently is yeah, but I think it has a lot to do with the trust factor that underlies that. I'm not going to make a decision that's going to be, financially detrimental to the owners in what we're doing to connect, but I might make a decision that, has less ROI than a typical project, and yet that's okay because there's more coming from the heart.
More long tail now rather than just P&L to P&L.
It's a long game altogether right now, and I think we all realize that after the first 8 weeks.
I remember having a conversation with a senior VP or senior person in HR when I was a department head. And they asked me, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Like, why are you in this industry? What do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 or 10 years? And of course, a young, ambitious manager, I said, I want to be a general manager. And this person said to me, in this day and age, why on earth would anybody want to be a hotel general manager? And this is probably sometime around 2008. So, if anybody, what happened in 2008.
Yep.
And I never really connected the dots on that conversation until I got close to GM and then got my first GM posting. And I remembered that conversation, like not long after, being like, oh, this is what she was talking about. And someone in HR knows, right? So it was, I don't know if it was a warning, but just a like, you should really think about this and do your research. I loved it. Everything about the job was amazing, but you definitely earn your paycheck.
Yes, you do.
How has the job changed? You've been doing it for a while now. How has the job changed pre versus where we are today? Are there different expectations of you from your ownership group, from the brand, of your employees? What's the state of play here?
So I think two things stand out to me. Like the first things to come to mind is just financial acumen is so important in the world that we're currently living in. And it's not always the sexy or funnest part of the job. But when we talk to owners and they talk to us, at the end of the day, for some owners, it was the difference between making your debt responsibility and not. And that had to be fully understood at every level, up, down, left, right. So I feel like that piece has always been important to owners, but is just mission critical right now. And then on the exact opposite end of the spectrum is the importance of mental health for our talent members, for our general managers, for our brand leadership teams, for really every person in the organization and who's connected to the hotel. And sometimes if you want to talk about ROI, it's hard to put an ROI on mental health, but we know it exists. And so I think the job has changed for me in that I'm coming from both of those lenses all the time. And, it's a balance in how we're staffing and in how we're bringing resources and then how we're encouraging people to be real and honest and talk through what are your needs, what are your frustrations, what do you think, what are the things where you think we have gaps right now? Like, what can we do to address those, maybe creatively or with better support or better conversation, more transparency, sometimes with bringing resources, bringing people back to work or, kind of figuring it out. I mean, I know that I'm not alone in this journey of the general manager right now. You wanted everybody back to work right away, but that wasn't possible. And there had to be some type of ramp. And then sometimes people you thought would come back were not able to, or chose not to, and others that you weren't sure. And then they were the first ones there. And so I feel like the job of the general manager is more complex now than it's ever been. But also there's more openness and transparency to talk about those things at all levels of the organization, including with ownership groups, that have been a really positive shift, I feel, for the industry, and need to continue to be on the agenda because we understand the financial responsibilities and the piece and pressures that come with that. But without people, we don't have anything to sell. You know, we're bringing experiences, whether it's a clean room or, you know, a lovely check-in experience or connection at the bar. I mean, we're bringing those experiences to our guests through the people. Yeah. And so people have to have a priority in mental health space.
And that's always been the tricky part of the industry, is that we don't sell anything other than experience. You're selling a memory, and you really hope at the end of the day it's a good one, but nobody's taking a thing with them when they leave unless, you know, you give them a robe or something. But like, you're just taking a memory with you, right? So that's a really interesting perspective. I like the mental health angle to that, because it is tough dealing with people, and it's tough when it's hard when you're fully staffed.
Yes.
And, you know, layer on, you know, you're probably the only person working at the desk, and not only are you checking people in and out and answering the phones and probably making reservations, you're doing bags and all that stuff, but you're probably doing something else. Maybe you're cleaning the lobby more often than you ever did before. So yeah, it's definitely tricky right now. I imagine. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's, I imagine it's tough from a staffing perspective. And there's something kind of on this note here before we wrap that's interesting. I really want to get your perspective on. I have this idea that I'm fascinated with the intersection of vacation rentals and hotels. In that the vacation rental side of the business has modernized and automated a lot of functions that are traditional in hotels. And if you really boil down what the two businesses do, fundamentally, if you're providing a room and a slightly enhanced experience, not, you know, talking at the luxury level, but like a room is a room here and there. Somebody checks in, it has to be clean. You have to have good service before you arrive. You have to know where you're going. Sure, there are some, you know, structural differences in how that's applied, but I can't shake this feeling that at some point there's going to be some level of automation brought into the hotel industry, or like wherever the guest acceptance of a lesser experience and inability to find people to do the jobs. And the third graph point is like cost of automation and the ROI of just, you know, replacing people. There's not so much a question in there, more of like a perspective. So, you know, you're in it, you're dealing with the staffing issues, you're talking with owners all the time. You've got brand behind you dictating a lot of what goes on at the same time. How do you see things playing out when it comes to this staffing thing that we're dealing with? Do you see that, like, could we go down that direction, or is that not a part of the conversation right now?
It's definitely not a part of the conversation for me and from my perspective on where we are in our industry, because I think, if anything, COVID taught us that maybe more time alone or more separation isn't actually better all of the time, or what we want. But I kind of guess I would have to go to the airline piece. You know, back when airlines started doing self-check-in, it was like, oh, no one's going to do this. Like, it just won't happen. But there was a certain subset of the traveler that wanted that. And so it became about guest and customer choice, ultimately. And then there were still people at the counter. And as proficiency grew, the travelers checked in more frequently via the kiosk. And, you know, now, I mean, I just recently traveled over the Thanksgiving holiday, and we don't give a thought about finding the person at the front of the line. That's not what we're looking for when we walk into an airport anymore. But when I needed help, when it was a question about how the connection was going to work with the bag, I fully expect that there's going to be an amazing, talented individual there who can answer my question. Right. And I think that is the heart and soul of our business. Is we shouldn't ever be afraid of automation. And I think most of the major brands, including the amazing Marriott Bonvoy app, puts that front and center. If you want a mobile check-in, we can do that for you. That's available. But we are still going to have that bright, talented individual waiting for you when you want a suggestion about the hottest place to go to dinner or the best place to take your client, out for a drink or out to see something in Minneapolis. So, it will help with the staffing concerns on the places that we just don't actually have the people, and it can be automated in a way that isn't disruptive. But I think about the things I love about travel. It's the conversations where someone tells you about their favorite taco joint, or, says you can't leave this city without going here. And so I feel like that's the part that hospitality has maybe different than some of these other sort of transactional, if it was a robot serving us drinks on an airplane, I don't think people would be as happy with that. They still want to see that person and be able to ask the question, and more so to me in hotels. But, I worked for the Aloft brand, and we had a robot delivering amenities for a while. I think that's okay. But people were still coming down to the lobby for a cocktail and some live music. And so that my perspective is that the things we love most about travel are not driven right now by technology. And I don't know that they ever will be. But the parts that we can automate without impacting experience and connection, we probably will, and maybe should. Yeah. Because it will give us more time with the people who are interested in the connection.
That's just another part of the balancing act of a GM and a brand and a hotel company today. Christy, this was a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you being on the show. If anybody wants to learn more about you or what you're up to or the W Minneapolis, where should they go?
For sure, connect with us online. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Christy Loy, or on our Instagram is probably the best place to see what's hot in Minneapolis.
Sounds great. Well, look, I wish you all the best through the holidays and next year, and thanks for doing what you do.
You too, Adam. Great to chat with you.